another edition of Edmeets. So in this section, we are going to dive quickly into the intersection between foundational learning and climate action. We hope that we'll be able to highlight the role of foundational learning in climate action. We're also going to be able to demonstrate how early educational foundations will enable children to understand, not just understand, they will care about and respond to climate issues. We also hope to inspire educators, stakeholders, policy makers on the need to take action as regards to climate, even in education. So before we proceed, I want us to just reflect. Let's reflect on one small habit we have to help the environment. What's that one small habit we have to help our environment? It could be as little as planting a tree. It could be recycling. It could be upcycling. Just drop in the chat that little habit you have to help the environment. I would love to read your responses. Thank you. Climate action, we know, just like Mofi has said, has become one of the most pressing issues of our time. Around the world, we're witnessing rising temperatures, severe weather events, and even the loss of biodiversity. All these that we're seeing right now are a sign that our planet is in distress, from the devastating floods, even in Nigeria, to the wildfires in North America. These challenges remind us of the urgent need to act. And with less than 6 years left to achieving the SDGs, we as educators, we as policymakers and advocates, we need to start re-strategizing more on how we can equip the next generation with the knowledge and the skills that they need to address these complex challenges. Because when we talk about climate action, it isn't just about saving the planet. It's also about protecting our homes. It's also about our livelihood. It's also about our future. It's about ensuring that our children can grow up in a world that is safe, that is healthy, and filled with opportunities. And so these problems shouldn't be left out to a certain set of people. It calls for what? A collective effort. The education sector has a critical role to play, and the answer starts with foundational learning. The foundation is the great place to start teaching about climate change, because children are still developing their understanding of the world around them and learning how to think critically about what complex action. And so when we talk about this foundational learning, we're talking about literacy, we're talking about numeracy, we're talking about critical thinking. How can we help our children at the foundational level to start thinking about complex problems? But they cannot think about complex problems if their foundation is not deep. If their foundation is shallow, they cannot even crystallize these complex issues that we are talking about. So why is foundational learning important? Why does it matter? Because it provides children with the essential reading, writing, and arithmetic skills that they need for further education and everyday life. We cannot, like I said earlier, we cannot talk about complex issues without foundational learning. It is the foundation that learning is crystallized so that a child can make sense of these issues that we are talking about. So we cannot separate foundational learning from climate action. If we must make progress, we need to invest in our foundation. Another reason why this is important is because it encourages curiosity. Children are at the level where they are curious. They are curious about the world around them. And so that is the right time for us to engage them in problem solving. That is the right time to start teaching them about decision making at that early age. And also it helps to establish the habits and the skills that will make learning easier and more enjoyable in the future. By habit, we're talking about a child knowing that he needs to, after eating his biscuits or his cookies, he needs to know how to trash in the proper place, because these little habits are what we grow up as adults to become. It also helps to empower children to participate actively in the learning process in the classroom and even in their communities. We want children that are community-centric, that are conscious of their environment. And finally, foundational learning is what we equip children to tackle these global issues like climate change that we're talking about at that foundational level. Now, you would see that the importance of foundational learning cannot be overemphasized. It will interest you to know that despite the fact that Africa has the largest youth population in the world, with more than 450 million young people within the age bracket of 15 and 35. And the beautiful thing is that this population is expected to significantly increase, accounting for over 75% of the continent's total population and 52% of global youth population by 2030. But despite this advantage, this our numerical advantage, the average national climate change literacy rate in Africa is 37%. It means that 63% do not even understand what we're talking about. They don't even know what we're. So no matter the advocacy we go out there for, no matter the things we say, we have a whole number as high as 63% in Africa, not even understanding what we're talking about. And this is far lower than what we have in Europe and even in North America, where the rates are as high as 80%. So this data just tells us that there is a correlationship between education and climate change, because people need to be knowledgeable to take the needed action. Now, when we come to our own data from Learn Nigeria, we will see that as crucial as climate change education is important, we might not be achieving a whole lot if we do not invest heavily in our foundational learning. Because from our data, we can see that only 12% of the male children in primary 3 that were assessed could read at primary 2 level, only 12%. And 16% of the female children could read at story level. That number is screaming, I need help. That's actually what the number is screaming. Like, there needs to be something done urgently. If we need to actually achieve a lot when we talk about climate action, when we talk about climate change, we need to invest in our foundational learning. Now, for primary 6, only 20% of the male children can read. So it means that when you bring out literature for people to read, when they cannot read common sentences, how can they interpret what is being said about climate, right? And then 28% of female children can read at that story level. We're talking about primary 6 children, that are about to leave to secondary school, only 28%. Now, for children in JS3, 56% of both the male and female children can read up to story level. That number isn't also so fantastic. It means that for us to make progress in climate action, we need to tackle some of the root causes of learning poverty. We need to go down to the drawing board, because climate action is complex, and then it's the understanding we have at the foundational level that will help us to even understand these complex issues. Now, let's talk about numeracy, for example. Only 8% of the male children were able to calculate at multiplication level, and 12% of the female did the same, right? So it means that when we're talking about carbon footprint, when we're talking about tons of plastic waste that have been recycled, a lot of children will not even understand. The next generation of children that we hope to take on the mantle of leadership and join the fight against climate change do not even understand, because they cannot even calculate. And that's why this data is so important to us, understanding the correlationship and the intersection between climate change and what foundational learning. Still on this data, 35% of the male children and 21% of the female children in primary 6 were able to calculate at multiplication level. We're not talking about calculus here. We're not talking about simultaneous equation. We're just talking about multiplication level. Now, given that 60% of African population is under the age of 25, Educating this demographic can create a generation of climate-conscious citizens who can lead climate action in their communities. We can do this by intentionally laying the foundation for sustainability. Now, it's also important to note that foundational learning is the bedrock of sustainability, just like I've explained earlier. Literacy, when we talk about foundational learning, these are like the core of it. Now, literacy is what allows children to read, to understand, and to interpret information about climate change and the environmental issues. So this is what forms the basics for climate literacy. Literacy is what forms the basics for climate literacy. So a child needs to understand the basic before he's able to understand climate literacy. So it is what enables our students to stay informed. And so it means that we need to invest heavily in it. So if you're a teacher here, if you're a stakeholder, we need to understand that even teachers, we can even integrate climate action when we teach literacy. So even at the foundational level, as a teacher, let's say you're a teacher here, you can start integrating climate action at that level. That way, children do not only learn academic concepts, but they are also learning about their environment. Imagine teaching spelling, for example, and you use words related to sustainability, such as A is for air, rather than A is for apple and all that. So you want your children to be aware of what is going on around them, you want them to start thinking critically, and then you start introducing them as simple as teaching them spelling. A is for air, C is for clean, T is for trash. R is for reuse, S is for save. Now, when we keep doing that, our children get used to these words and it becomes a part of their vocabulary. Or you want to teach grammar, you can use simple and very relatable sentences that will connect grammatical concepts with environmental themes, such as you saying, oh, trash can hurt our planet. Take, for example, you're teaching verbs and you've mentioned that hot is a verb. Could and fine. What's the sentence that can follow? Trash can hurt our environment. She is saving water. Examples like that can be used at the foundational level to introduce our children to climate change. Now, for numeracy, children will learn to analyze data. When we teach numeracy and we teach the skills associated with numeracy, we're teaching children how to analyze data. We're teaching them how to understand quantities. We're teaching them how to make sense of statistics. And these are very crucial to grasping the numbers behind climate change. Like I mentioned earlier, carbon footprints. Students will be able to understand their carbon footprints. They will be able to understand and calculate their resource usage and even their energy consumption. So teachers can integrate this into the lesson at that foundational level. And so we don't even need to teach it separately. We don't need to put it in a level where you're making choices. No, this climate action, education, sustainability, they go hand in hand. We can ask students to count reusable items. How many bottles do we have in the recycling bin? Oh, we have 10 bottles. If I add 2, how many do we have? We have 12. You're not just teaching addition in numeracy, you're also introducing them to climate change. And then when we talk about critical thinking, that's another place that our children get empowered to evaluate what the environmental issues. They start questioning the assumptions and they start thinking critically and creatively about solutions. You want them to start recognizing environmental challenges. You want them to be able to recognize harmful practices and non-harmful practices. You want them to be able to make informed decisions. You want them to be able to know, oh, this category of waste can be recycled and this cannot be recycled. You want them to know that this is organic waste and this is recyclable waste. You want them to even start thinking of how can I even change a bottle cover, the lid of a bottle? What can I even do with it? So they start thinking, okay, what else can I use a plastic bottle that I just saw in my classroom for? And they start thinking, oh, I can use it as my pencil case. And that's a brilliant idea. So that's also how we introduce climate change, climate action to children at that foundational level. And that's why this level, foundational learning, is very, very important. Finally, we must know that and we must realize that children are not just beneficiaries of the SDGs. They are very powerful agents of change in creating a better future. When we educate our children as early as possible, It will help them to understand the causes, the consequences of the problems, and then take action towards a better society and towards a greener world. Thank you so much.